Hey there, fellow naturalists. I'm Professor Iwigi with Crow's Path, and this is the third in our series on things that spin. So today we're going to be making spinning tops. We've already made thaumatropes and buzzsaws, so go ahead and check out those videos. And today we're going to be combining our lesson with things that spin with things that whirl. So I'm here in this beautiful little primary succession forest. I'm going to show you how to tell how old a forest is by using white pines in particular. So let's take a look at some white pines and then we'll harvest our materials and make our spinning top. Yeah, white pines are really easy to identify when you're out in the woods. They have needles, and you can find these on the base of the tree. Needles on a white pine will last about 2 years before they fall off, and so every fall about half the tree turns this really beautiful golden color. But if you find one of these little bundles on the ground, or if there's a lower branch and you can grab one, you count the number of needles in the bundle, and there should be 5. And so WHITE, white pine, it's the only pine that we have here in Vermont that has 5 needles in a bundle. So pretty easy to recognize that way. One of the cool features of white pine, which we can also call old field pine, is that they are a primary succession species. They're one of the first trees to move into, in particular, old fields once they're abandoned. So if you have one single white pine, not a strong indicator of that, but if you have a solid stand of white pines that are all roughly the same age, it tells you that there was a pasture there in the past at one point. So the next question that comes up is, well, how old is that pasture, or when was that pasture abandoned? And to do that, we need to be able to figure out how old a white pine is. So the way you'll do this is, here's an old scar, a ring of scars from branches that used to be on here. So that's 1, here's another one, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'll count about halfway up the trunk, and then we're gonna double that number. And then, because in the early stages of growth you can't always see signs from those, so we'll add about 5 or 10 for the number of branches that we didn't see. So I'm going to go ahead and count. So I get about 18, 20 halfway up, so I'm going to double that, that's 40, and then add about 5 or 10. So that puts us about at 1970 for this little patch here. So to confirm that this farm was abandoned around 1970, what I want to do is count a bunch of other trees and get an accurate estimate of those trees and see if they're all about the same age. So let's go ahead and do that. So Boots and I counted 15 different white pines to see how old they were, and we got about 45 or 50 years for each one of those trees. So that's a really strong indicator that this area, about 45 or 50 years ago, was a farm or an old field that was then abandoned or released, and all those trees were able to start growing right around the same period of time. So a pretty simple trick for interpreting a piece of land's history. And yeah, now we're going to switch gears from things that whirl to things that spin using our white pine. So we're going to make some spinning tops out of white pine, and I'll go through what we're looking for in materials, and then I'll show you how we can make those spinning tops. So let's get started with material selection. Okay, so we've got a white pine that's dead. One of the things about these primary succession forests is that there's an intense amount of competition as all these little seedlings all start growing in this area. There's tons of sunlight to fuel their growth, and as they start getting taller, they start to crowd each other out, both in terms of their roots and also in terms of shade from the canopy. So there's a lot of death in these primary succession forests, and we're going to take advantage of that to, cut this little white pine. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to make sure that the tree that you're cutting is as symmetric as possible to evenly distribute the weight. If you have something like birch trunks tend to grow in a more oval pattern, and as those spin, they're going to throw off your spinning top. So we want something that's really round, so cutting from the trunk can be really good. Branches tend to have either support from the bottom, as in conifers, which is compression wood, and it supports a branch growing up, and then on hardwoods we have tension wood that actually pulls the branch up. And so we don't want those, so go ahead and find a nice clean section of trunk. The denser the wood, the better. Heavier tops are going to spin better than lighter tops. White pine is on the lighter end of the spectrum, but it's the material at hand, so I'm going to go ahead and use that, and we'll see how it spins anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a section, and my spinning top is only going to be about 3 or so inches tall, but I'm going to work with a longer section. just so I have more material to work with. So I'll go ahead and cut this, and then we'll start cutting it down into its final shape. All right, so we've got our tools, we've got our materials, and we've got our little workbench here. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to rough out this shape. Alright, so I've carved our point down. I did a really rough job here. I'll sand this smooth in a little bit. I've got kind of a blunt tip on the end and kind of a shallow slope. The shallower the better for these so that you can keep the weight down towards the bottom of the top. So now that I've got that, the next step is we're going to take our saw and I'm going to give probably about a 1/2 inch or so above that. And I'm going to saw in, and I'm going to saw it about to a little bit less than where the depth of the handle will be. So I'll go in a perfect circle here. So I don't want to go all the way through on this first cut. And then now I'm going to go a little bit high up on where the handle will be, and I'm going to make another cut, and I'll go all the way through this time. Okay, so now what I can do is I can use the knife and just split off everything that's not the handle. And the key with this part is to be as even as possible because you want your handle right in the center. So just make sure you're checking in with your saw marks so you don't go too deep. And eventually what you'll do is you'll get to a point where you can start to carve this down rather than using the brute force method. Alright, so here we go. We've got sort of a rough outline of our spinning top. I'm going to just go ahead and carve down the rest with a little bit finer of detail, and then we'll give it a spin. Alright, thanks for joining us and learning how to make spinning tops. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more how-to videos on cool activities to do out in the woods that'll help you connect to the world around you. Until next time, I'm Teague, and yeah, thanks for joining.